For 15 years, I thought I was married to the perfect man. What I didn't realize was that I had also married his mother. From the day we said, "I do," Margaret made it her mission to remind me that I was an outsider, unworthy of her son, and a threat to their perfect family. She manipulated, she schemed, and eventually she planted a lie so devastating that my husband packed a bag and walked out the door. She thought she had won. She thought she had destroyed me. But Margaret made one critical mistake. She underestimated the woman her son married. This is the story of how I rebuilt what she tried to burn down and made her watch. Hello. Welcome to Hurt Stories. Everyone loves a good love story, and mine started like one. I met Michael at a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was soaked. My presentation for work had just been ruined, and I was this close to bursting into tears. He was the stranger who handed me a napkin and said that rain always stops eventually, that I just needed a better umbrella. He had kind eyes, a warm smile, and when he asked for my number, I gave it to him without hesitation. That was 15 years ago. Back then, I believed in fate. I believed that the universe had brought us together. What I didn't know was that the universe had also attached a permanent, unshakable third party to our union. His mother, Margaret. Let me be clear, I'm not naive. I knew that when you marry someone, you marry their family. My own mother gave me that advice on my wedding day, but she forgot to mention what happens when the family doesn't want to marry you back. When they view you not as a new daughter, but as an invader, a thief, a woman who stole their precious son away. Michael was a mama's boy. I see that now with painful clarity. But back then, I saw a devoted son. His father had died when Michael was young, and Margaret had raised him alone. I admired that. I respected the bond they shared. I thought it spoke to his character, his loyalty, his capacity to love. The first time I met Margaret, I dressed carefully. I brought flowers. I practiced what I would say. I wanted so badly for her to like me. She opened the door of her immaculate suburban home, looked at the flowers, looked at me, and smiled a smile that never reached her eyes. She called me Michael's friend, not his girlfriend. Then she spent the entire dinner talking about Michael's childhood, his accomplishments, and his ex-girlfriend, Cynthia, who was apparently such a lovely girl from such a good family. She showed me photo albums, Michael in his Little League uniform, at his high school graduation, at prom with Cynthia, both of them beaming. She told me they were just perfect together. She implied that sometimes people make different choices, and when she looked at me, I knew exactly what she meant. I was the different choice. The consolation prize. I brushed it off. I told myself she was just protective, that she needed time. Michael squeezed my hand under the table and whispered that she would come around, that I just needed to give her time. 15 years. That's how much time I gave her, and she never came around. She only got worse. The engagement was our first real battle. Michael proposed on a beach at sunset. It was perfect, romantic hours. When we called Margaret to share the news, there was a long, horrible pause on the other end of the line. She eventually offered congratulations, but then immediately asked about the date and suggested that spring was traditional, followed by a comment implying that I wasn't really a traditional girl, was I? She wanted to plan the wedding. No, she demanded to plan the wedding. She wanted her church, her caterer, her guest list. She wanted to wear beige, supposedly so she wouldn't overshadow the bride, but then she made a comment about how some brides just don't have the figure for white. I stood my ground. Michael and I planned our own wedding. Small, intimate, ours. Margaret showed up in cream, pure bridal cream, and she cried through the entire ceremony. Not happy tears, loud, sniffing, handkerchief-dabbing tears that drew every eye in the room. After the vows, she pulled Michael aside. I saw them through the window. She was gripping his arm, talking urgently. He was nodding, patting her hand, consoling her. On our wedding day. That should have been my first warning. That should have been the moment I realized that in Michael's world, his mother's feelings would always come first. But I was in love. I was married. I was blind. The first year of marriage is supposed to be the hardest. Adjusting to living together, merging your lives, learning each other's quirks. For us, the hardest part wasn't us. It was her. Margaret lived 45 minutes away. It might as well have been next door. She had a key to our house. Michael gave it to her for emergencies. She used it for dropping by, unannounced, constantly. I'd be in my pajamas on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and reading the paper, and the door would open. There she'd be, holding a casserole dish or a bag of Michael's favorite cookies, her eyes scanning my living room for signs of failure. She'd comment on me still being in my robe, mention how Michael always liked a tidy house, how his room was always spotless. And then she'd bring up Cynthia again, how Cynthia was such a neat freak, how she'd vacuum twice a week. Every visit was a reminder that I was being measured against a ghost, and found wanting she criticized everything. My cooking was too salty. My decorating was interesting, her favorite passive-aggressive word. My career as a graphic designer was cute, but not exactly stable, and she'd remind me that Michael needed someone who could manage a household, a home. She inserted herself into every decision. When we wanted to buy a new car, she appeared at the dealership, announcing she knew the salesman and would handle the negotiation. When we wanted to go on vacation, she had suggestions that became expectations. Why weren't we visiting her? Why were we wasting money on trips when we should be saving for a house with a guest room? For her, obviously. And Michael mediated. He was Switzerland and the war between his wife and his mother. He'd tell me she didn't mean it, that was just how she was. He'd tell her I was doing my best to please be nice. He never took a side, which meant he never took mine. The cracks started small. I'd be upset after a visit from Margaret. I'd try to talk to Michael about it. He'd listen, nod, and then change the subject. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to choose. He wanted peace. And the easiest way to have peace was for me to just tolerate it, to be the bigger person, to let it go. So I did. For years, I let it go. I let her comments slide. I let her intrusions pass. I smiled through holiday dinners where she sat at the head of my table and directed the conversation like a queen holding court. I watched her give Michael gifts, expensive watches, tailored shirts, and hand me a scented candle with a tight smile, saying she knew how I loved smells. I was the outsider, the interloper, the woman who had disrupted the perfect mother-son relationship, and no matter what I did, I could never fix it. But here's the thing about love. It's resilient. Michael and I had good years, wonderful years. We built a life together. We bought that house with the guest room. She moved in for 3 months to help with the renovation and nearly drove me insane, but we survived. We adopted a dog, a ridiculous golden retriever named Gus who loved everyone unconditionally. We traveled. We laughed. We made love on Sunday mornings with the windows open and the sun streaming in. In those moments, she didn't exist. It was just us. And I believed that was enough. I believed our love was stronger than her poison. Then came the baby discussions. I was 38 when we started talking seriously about having a child. My biological clock was ticking. I'd frozen my eggs years ago, just in case, but we both felt the pull. We wanted a family. We wanted to be parents. Margaret's reaction when we told her was pure, unfiltered joy. She clapped her hands. She teared up, real tears this time. She hugged Michael, and then, for the first time in a decade, she hugged me. Properly. Warmly. She said she was going to be a grandmother, that this was the most wonderful news. I was stunned. I was suspicious. But I was also hopeful. Maybe this was it. Maybe a baby would change everything. Maybe she would finally accept me as the mother of her grandchild. Maybe we could be a real family. I was so naive. At first, Margaret was helpful, almost too helpful. She researched the best fertility clinics. She sent articles about prenatal nutrition. She offered to drive me to appointments. It was overwhelming, but I told myself it came from a good place. She was excited. She wanted to be involved. But slowly, subtly, the narrative began to shift. It started with questions about my health. Innocent enough. She'd ask if I was eating enough, comment that I looked thin, mention that stress could affect fertility. Then she'd ask Michael if I was sleeping, point out my dark circles. Then it became about my age. She'd mention articles she'd read about women having babies later in life, the risks that increased after 40. She wasn't saying I was too old, not directly. She was just worried, you see. Michael deserved to be a father while he was still young enough to enjoy it. Then it became about my career. She'd visit and comment on how demanding graphic design was, all those deadlines, all that screen time. She'd read somewhere that electromagnetic radiation could affect egg quality. Maybe I should consider cutting back, or stopping altogether, for the baby's sake. Each comment was a tiny needle. Alone, it was nothing. Together, they formed a portrait of me as a liability, a risk, a woman who might not be able to give Michael the child he deserved. I tried to talk to Michael about it. I told him his mother kept making comments about my age, about my health. It was starting to feel like she was trying to say I wasn't fit to have a baby. He sighed and told me I was being paranoid. She was just excited, he said. She wanted this as much as we did. Could I please just try to get along with her for once? For once, as if I was the problem. As if I was the one who had spent 15 years making snide remarks and showing up uninvited. I backed down. I always back down. We started fertility treatments. It was brutal. The hormones, the appointments, the waiting, the crushing disappointment month after month. Michael was supportive, but he didn't really understand. He wasn't the one injecting himself with drugs. He wasn't the one whose body was being poked and prodded and probed. Margaret, of course, knew everything. Michael told her. He told her about every appointment, every procedure, every result. I asked him to stop. I begged him. This was private. This was ours. But he said she was just trying to help, that she cared, that I was being unreasonable. After our third failed IUI, Margaret showed up with a stack of articles. About adoption, about surrogacy, about accepting God's plan. She told me that maybe this was a sign that maybe I just wasn't meant to carry a child. She said some women's bodies just can't, that it was nothing to be ashamed of, but that I had to be realistic. Michael was 42. He couldn't wait forever. I lost it. I actually lost it. I told her to get out of my house. She immediately switched to playing the victim, saying she was just trying to help, just being honest, that someone had to tell me the truth. Michael walked in right at that moment. She started crying, telling him I was yelling at her for no reason, that she was only trying to be supportive. And Michael looked at me with disappointment. Disappointment in me. He asked me to apologize. I didn't apologize. I walked out of the room. And as I left, I heard her whisper to him, saying I was so emotional, that it was the hormones, that he had to be patient with me because I couldn't help it. She made me the crazy one, the irrational one, the hormonal woman who couldn't control her emotions. And Michael, God help him, believed her, at least a little. The fourth IVF cycle worked. I was pregnant. After 2 years of treatments, thousands of dollars, and more tears than I can count, I was finally pregnant. I'll never forget telling Michael. I bought a little onesie that said, "Hello, Daddy," and wrapped it in a box. He opened it on a random Tuesday night, and when he realized what it meant, he cried. He held me so tight I could barely breathe. We were going to be parents. We were going to be a family. Telling Margaret was different. We invited her over for dinner. I made her favorite dessert, lemon tart, from scratch. Michael couldn't wait. He blurted it out before we even sat down. He told her we were having a baby, that she was going to be a grandmother. Her face did something strange. For just a fraction of a second, I saw it. A flicker of something dark. Disappointment, Rage, it was gone in an instant, replaced by a wide, theatrical smile. She hugged Michael. She hugged me stiffly, briefly. She ate the lemon tart. She asked all the right questions. Due date, names, the nursery. We told her we were turning the guest room into a nursery. Her room, the room she used when she visited. I saw that flicker again when I mentioned that. Just for a second. Then it was gone. She made a comment about how she supposed we wouldn't need a guest room anymore, about how silly she was for thinking she'd still be welcome. Michael assured her she was always welcome, that we'd always have a place for her. She patted his hand and said she knew. The next few months were strange. Margaret was outwardly supportive, but her support always came with a sting. She bought us a crib, then told me she'd chosen it because the one I picked looked cheap. She offered to throw the baby shower, then invited 30 of her friends and none of mine. She asked to be in the delivery room. I said no. She asked Michael to convince me. He tried. I said no again. She started showing up more often. Unannounced, as always. She'd bring gifts, baby clothes in colors I hated, books about parenting that contradicted everything I believed. She'd critique my nursery decorating, my diet, my birth plan. She'd ask if I was really going to try for a natural birth at my age. I was exhausted, pregnant, hormonal, terrified, and exhausted. Michael traveled for work sometimes, and on those nights I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was strong enough to do this. To be a mother, to be a wife, to keep fighting his mother. Then 4 weeks before my due date, Michael had to go to a conference in Chicago. 3 days. He didn't want to leave me, but I insisted. I was fine. The baby was fine. He should go. He went. And Margaret moved in. She didn't ask. She just appeared with a suitcase, announcing she'd stay to help while Michael was away. I was too tired to fight. I let her in. That first night, she made dinner. She was almost nice. She asked about my work. She asked about the baby names. She even apologized, sort of, for being overbearing. She told me she knew she could be a lot, that she knew she'd made things hard. She said Michael was all she had, that he'd been her whole world since his father died. She said when he married me, she was afraid of losing him. It was the most vulnerable she'd ever been with me, and stupidly, foolishly, I believed her. I told her she wasn't losing him, that she was gaining a granddaughter and a daughter-in-law who wanted to make this work. I asked if we could try, for real this time. She said she'd like that. We hugged. An actual, real hug. I went to bed that night feeling lighter than I had in years. Maybe, finally, things would be different. I woke up at 2 a.m. to a strange sound. Voices. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. It was Margaret, on the phone. Her voice was low, urgent, and she was crying. She was talking to someone. I later learned it was her sister, and she was saying that she didn't know what to do. She said Michael needed to know the truth. She said he deserved to know. She claimed I'd been lying to him for years, that the baby might not even be his. She said she'd seen messages on my phone, that I'd been meeting someone, a man from my work. She said Michael needed to come home. She said she had proof. She said she'd taken pictures. She was going to send them to her sister, who was supposed to tell Michael. She said he wouldn't believe her if she told him, that he always took my side, but he'd believe her sister. I don't remember going back to my room. I don't remember sitting on the bed, clutching my belly, feeling the baby kick. I remember the numbness. The cold, spreading numbness of complete and utter betrayal. She had played me. The apology, the vulnerability, the talk of trying to make it work, it was all a setup. She had been planting evidence, framing me, and now she was setting the trap. I wanted to confront her, I wanted to scream, but I couldn't, I was frozen. And then a different feeling crept in. Cold, clear, focused. She thought she could destroy me. She thought she could take my husband, my marriage, my family. But she made a mistake. She did it in my house. She did it while I was listening. And she had no idea that for 15 years I had been keeping receipts. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, my hand on my belly, feeling the baby move, and I planned. Margaret thought she was the only one who could scheme. She thought I was just the emotional, irrational wife. She had no idea what I was capable of. The next morning, I acted normal. I came downstairs. Margaret made me breakfast. She was solicitous, caring, the perfect mother-in-law. She told me I looked tired, that I should rest, that she would take care of everything. I ate her eggs. I drank her orange juice. I smiled. And all the while, I was watching her, cataloging every false kindness, every fake smile. She was good. She was very good, but I was better. Michael came home the next day. He walked in the door, and I knew instantly that something was wrong. He wouldn't look at me. He hugged his mother first. He barely kissed my cheek. He said he was tired and went to take a shower. Margaret gave me a small, satisfied smile, then picked up her purse and left, saying we needed our time. The bomb dropped at dinner. Michael sat across from me, pushing food around his plate. Finally, he looked up. His eyes were red. He looked broken. He asked me if I was having an affair. He asked me to be honest with him. The words hung in the air. I had prepared for this. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times since I heard Margaret on the phone. But still, hearing him say it was like a knife. I told him no. I told him I was not having an affair. He slid his phone across the table. On it was a photo of me and my coworker, David, at a coffee shop. We were laughing. His hand was on my arm. It looked intimate. If you didn't know the context, you might think something. I explained that David was from work, that we were grabbing coffee during a break, that he was telling me about his daughter's soccer game. That was it. He showed me another photo. Me and David walking to our cars in the parking lot. Late. The lighting made it look darker than it was. I explained we were leaving work at the same time. I reminded him I was 8 months pregnant with his child and asked when exactly he thought I had time for an affair. He said he didn't know what to think. He said his mother had sent him these photos. He said she'd been worried about me for months, that I'd been distant and secretive. He said she'd found messages on my phone. I asked if she'd gone through my phone. He said she was trying to help, that she saw a notification pop up that looked wrong, that she was worried about me and the baby. I laughed, a bitter, hollow laugh. I told him his mother had been trying to destroy our marriage since the day we met, and he was going to believe her over me. He said she had no reason to lie, that she loved us, that she wanted this baby. He asked why she would make this up. I told him the truth. I told him she didn't want me, she never had. She wanted him all to herself. And a baby meant I was tied to him forever, unless she could convince him the baby wasn't his. He got very quiet, and then he asked the question that broke something fundamental inside me. He asked if the baby was his. I felt something crack. The love I had for this man, the man I'd built a life with, the man who was supposed to protect me, it cracked. It didn't shatter, but it cracked. I told him to get out. I told him if he had to ask me that question, if he had to think about it for even 1 second, then I didn't want him there. I told him to go to his mother to tell her she won. But I also told him that if he came back, he better have proof. Real proof, not her lies. He stared at me. For a long moment, I thought he might stay. I thought he might choose me. But then he grabbed his keys. He walked to the door. He paused and said he was sorry, that he just needed time to think. He left, the door closed, and I stood in my kitchen, 8 months pregnant, alone, and I let the tears come. I cried for the marriage I thought we had. I cried for the baby who deserved better. And then, when the tears stopped, I got angry. Cold, focused, righteous anger. Margaret wanted a war. She was about to get one. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Michael stayed at his mother's house. He texted a few times, asking how I was feeling, if the baby was okay, but he didn't come home. He didn't fight for us. He waited. He let his mother feed him more poison, and I prepared. I am a graphic designer. I am organized. I am detail-oriented. And for 15 years, I had kept a journal. Not a diary, exactly. A record. Every time Margaret said something cruel, I wrote it down. Every time she showed up uninvited, I noted it. Every gift with a hidden sting, every manipulation, every lie, I documented it. I also had the photos. I went back through my phone, my computer, my social media. I found timestamps for every interaction with David. I found emails proving we were working late on projects. I reached out to coworkers who could vouch for our professional relationship. But the real gold was the voicemails. Margaret loved leaving voicemails. Long, rambling, incriminating voicemails. I had kept them all. 15 years of her poison preserved in digital amber. I listened to them, one by one, and I transcribed them. The passive-aggressive comments, the outright insults, the moments where she forgot I might ever hear them and let her true self show. There was one where she called to ask if I'd thought any more about a job offer in Chicago, the one that would take me away from her. She said a girl could dream. There was another where she mentioned seeing me at the grocery store and wanted to offer some friendly advice that my leggings weren't flattering on a woman my age. There was one after a fight where she said she didn't know why Michael married me, that he could have had Cynthia, who was a doctor now, a real success. But no, she said, he chose me and she had to live with it. We all had to live with it. I had enough, more than enough. But I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof of what she had done this time. I hired a private investigator. His name was Rick, a retired cop with a gruff manner and a genius for finding things. I told him everything. He listened, nodded, and said he'd need a week. A week later, he came back with a file. Margaret had indeed been gathering evidence. She had followed me. She had taken those photos. She had also, according to Rick, paid a kid from David's neighborhood to take pictures of his house, looking for any sign of me. She had called David's wife, pretending to be a concerned friend, and hinted that David was having an affair with a pregnant coworker. David's wife, thankfully, had laughed in her face and hung up. But the best part? Rick had gotten a recording, Margaret on the phone with her sister, gloating. She was talking about how Michael was staying with her now, sleeping in his old room just like when he was a boy. She said I was alone in that big house, pregnant and alone. She said by the time this was over, I'd be gone. He'd come back to her. He always does. I listened to that recording 3 times, and then I smiled. The trap was set. Now I just needed the mouse to walk into it. I gave birth to Emma on April 15th, just like the doctors predicted. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, perfect in every way. Michael was not there. I didn't tell him I was in labor. My best friend, Sarah, was there. She held my hand. She cut the cord. She cried with me when Emma took her first breath. I named her Emma Grace. Grace, because that's what it took to get through this. Grace and a whole lot of rage. I was home for 3 days before Michael showed up. He came alone. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, guilty. He stood on my porch, shifting from foot to foot. He asked if he could see her. He said he needed to see his daughter. I told him she wasn't his daughter if he believed I cheated on him. He said he didn't know what to believe anymore. He said his mother kept showing him things, telling him things, but he missed me. He missed us. He wanted to come home. I told him to come in, but to be prepared. I had something to show him. I led him to the living room. I had set it up like a courtroom, a table with a projector, a screen, files and folders arranged neatly. Emma was asleep in her bassinet in the corner, oblivious to the war being fought around her. He asked what all this was. I told him it was the truth. I told him to sit down. For the next 2 hours, I walked him through 15 years of evidence. The journal entries, the voicemails, the photos, the Pye's report, the recorded call with her sister. I showed him everything. I held nothing back. By the time I played the recording of Margaret gloating about him sleeping in his childhood bed, about me being alone, about him coming back to her because he always does. Michael's face was gray. He looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. I paused the recording. The room was silent except for Emma's soft breathing. I told him she didn't want to protect him. She wanted to own him. And she was willing to destroy our family, to make our daughter grow up without a father, to do it. That was who his mother was. Michael buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. I didn't comfort him. I couldn't. He had chosen her. He had left me. He had asked if my daughter was his. Some things can't be fixed with an apology. He eventually spoke, his voice muffled. He said he was sorry. He said he was blind. He asked how to fix this. I told him I didn't know if he could, but I told him how he could try. First, he was going to call his mother and tell her to come here. Tonight. And then he was going to sit there and watch while I showed her exactly what I had just shown him. He agreed. He called her. Margaret arrived within the hour. She swept in like she owned the place, a casserole dish in her hands, a smile on her face. She saw Michael and exclaimed that he was there. She saw me and commented that I was home. She headed for the bassinet to see her granddaughter. I stepped in front of her. I told her to sit down. She looked at Michael. He looked away. She sat. I didn't give her the 2-hour version. I gave her the highlight reel, the voicemails, the photos, the pie report, the recorded call. I saved the best for last. I told her I knew she had called my husband and told him I was having an affair. I knew she had shown him photos she stalked me to take. I knew she had called David's wife. I knew she had tried to destroy my marriage so she could have her little boy back in his childhood bed. I asked her if she really thought she would get away with it. Her face went through several colors: white, red, purple. Then it settled into a mottled, ugly gray. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Finally, she whispered that I had no proof. I told her I had just played her the proof on a loop for the last 2 hours. She turned to Michael. She started to plead, saying I was lying, that I had edited the recordings, that I was jealous of their relationship, that I was trying to turn him against her. Michael spoke. His voice was quiet, broken. He said he heard her on the recording. He heard her say he'd come back to her. He heard her gloat about destroying his marriage. He heard everything. Her face crumpled. For the first time in 15 years, I saw genuine emotion on her face. Not manipulation, not performance, real, raw fear. She insisted she did it for him, that everything she did was for him. She said I wasn't good enough for him, that I was never good enough. Michael told her that wasn't her choice to make. I told her to get out of my house and not come back. I told her if she tried to contact me or my daughter, I would release every single recording and every single document to everyone. Her friends, her church, her neighbors. They would all know exactly who she was. I asked if she understood me. She stared at me. For a long moment, I thought she might fight, but then something in her eyes died. She stood up slowly like an old woman. She walked to the door. She paused and looked back at Michael, waiting for him to stop her. He didn't. She left. The door closed, and for the first time in 15 years, she was gone. That was 5 years ago. 5 years since the reckoning. 5 years of rebuilding. Michael and I didn't make it. We tried. God, we tried. He went to therapy. He apologized over and over. He was a good father to Emma, present, loving, devoted. But I couldn't forget. I couldn't unhear that question. I couldn't unsee him walking out that door. Some wounds are too deep. We divorced amicably. We co-parent like champions. Emma spends weekends with him, Wednesdays with me. We do birthdays together, school plays together. We're a team, just not a married one. And honestly, it's better this way. The pressure is gone. The resentment has faded. We're friends, we're parents, we're okay. Margaret moved to Florida. I hear she lives in a retirement community, plays bridge, and tells anyone who will listen that her terrible daughter-in-law stole her son and granddaughter. Her friends probably believe her. I don't care. She has no power over me anymore. Michael sees her twice a year for a long weekend. Emma has met her exactly 3 times, always supervised, always briefly. She knows her grandmother as the lady who wasn't very nice to Mommy. When she's older, I'll tell her the rest. But for now, that's enough. I rebuilt my life. Not just survived, thrived. I started my own graphic design firm. It's small, but it's mine. I work from home, in the house that Margaret tried to take from me. I watch Emma play in the backyard, Gus the golden retriever chasing her, both of them covered in mud and joy. I even found love again. His name is Tom. He's a high school history teacher. Quiet, steady, kind. He has no mother issues. His mom is lovely. She brings me casseroles and means it. When I told him the story of Margaret, he listened, held my hand, and said I was incredible. He gets it. He gets me. Last week, Emma asked me a question. We were making cookies, flour everywhere, both of us laughing. She asked why Grandma Margaret doesn't come visit like Nana Tom does. I paused. I thought about how to answer. I thought about lies, about half-truths, about protecting her innocence. But then I looked at her sweet face, her curious eyes, and I decided on the truth. An age-appropriate truth. I told her that sometimes people have a hard time being happy for others. I told her Grandma Margaret had a hard time being happy that Daddy loved me. And that made her do and say things that weren't very nice. So we decided it was better if we didn't spend too much time with her. I told her it was sad, but it was also okay, because we have each other, and we have Nana Tom, and we have so much love in our house. Emma thought about this for a moment. Then she nodded, satisfied. She asked if we could put more sprinkles on the cookies. I said as many as she wanted. Margaret tried to destroy my marriage. She tried to destroy me. She spent 15 years planting poison, hoping it would kill the life I had built with her son. And you know what? In a way, she succeeded. She killed that marriage. She killed the woman I was, the woman who tolerated, who accommodated, who apologized for existing. But from the ashes of that woman, someone new was born. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who keeps receipts. Someone who will never, ever let anyone make her feel small again. Margaret thought she won. She thought she drove me out. But I'm still here, in my house, with my daughter, with my business, with my new love. And she's in Florida alone, playing bridge with strangers, wondering where it all went wrong. She tried to destroy my marriage. And in the end, all she did was set me free. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more story like this, please like the video and subscribe the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notified.